Okay, repeat after me. Out and about.
Out and about.
What? No. Let's try just one word. House.
House.
Oh no. Friend.
Bud. Buddy.
Oh God. Okay, never mind. Let's try something different. Let's try a full sentence. I was out and about near your house when I saw your friend Daniel.
I was out and about near your house when I saw your bud Daniel.
Hey, do you speak British English or Canadian English? Not sure? Well, don't worry, because in this video, we're going to explore the differences between them, focusing on pronunciation and vocabulary. To help me out with this video, I have a very special Canadian guest. Keira, please introduce yourself.
Hello, friends. My name is Keira, and I am an English teacher and test prep coach. As Chris already mentioned, I am Canadian, joining you from Vancouver.
Thanks, Keira. So to start with, the main difference between British and Canadian English lies in the vocabulary that we use. As you may have noticed, we often use different words to refer to the same thing. Here's a perfect example. What would you call these? Oh, really? Well, in British English, we would call them trainers, because usually you use them to do exercise or, in other words, to train.
In Canada, we'd call these runners because you run with them. Makes sense, doesn't it?
You see? Very different indeed. To make this more fun, we're going to turn this into a little challenge to see whether you use British English or Canadian English more. In the first part of this challenge, you're going to see some pictures on the screen, and each time you'll have about 5 seconds to shout out what you would call them. After that, I will say what it's called in British English, and then Keira will say what it's called in Canadian English. Then, in the second part, you'll see like a sentence on the screen with some text either highlighted or a question. What you have to do is think whether you'd use a British English slang term or a Canadian English slang term. Of course, like every video, get the free PDF worksheet that comes with this video, link in the description below. Go! Anyway, Keira, are you ready?
Let's get her done, which is Canadian for let's do this.
In the UK, we would normally call this a toilet. In any kind of situation, you could be in a restaurant or you could be at a friend's house. You would simply ask, where is the toilet? Or could I use the toilet, please? Of course, the toilet is simply the place where you do your business, but we just refer to the whole room as the toilet. So it's not something offensive or it's not something rude. We don't really think about it like that. We just think the whole room is the toilet.
In Canada, we always say washroom. Unless you're at someone's house, maybe you'll say bathroom, but 99 times out of 100, we call it a washroom. And it's kind of funny because toilet is seen as a little bit rude or crude. It's just like too direct for the polite Canadians.
For me, washroom sounds a little fancy. It sounds like something people used to say in like the 1960s or something. Like in the movies when the ladies would ask to go to the washroom to powder their noses. It just sounds a little bit archaic or a bit too posh, in my opinion. Toilet is something we always use in the UK. This is called a car park because, well, it's the place where you park your car. In the UK, I really hate car parks. I think they just seem to be building them smaller and smaller. For me, it's just a nightmare driving in a car park in the UK, especially when I have to drive up the spiral ramp to go up to different levels. It just seems like such a squeeze and I'm about to scratch the car. So yeah, a nightmare in general.
This is a parkade, and I couldn't agree more, Chris. They're a total nightmare. Last time I was in Europe, I rented a car, and on the very first day, I was driving into a parkade and scratched up the entire side. A nightmare indeed.
In the UK, you could call this a sofa or a settee. People often use these interchangeably. If you're in the north of England, you're maybe more likely to hear the word settee. Actually, my mother is from Liverpool, which is in the northwest of England, and she usually uses the word settee. I did ask her before I made this video just to confirm, but she often uses the word settee. Whereas my friends in the southwest, around Oxford, this area, they normally say sofa. Let's go sit on the sofa and watch a movie.
So yes, this is a Chesterfield sofa, although most people would just call it a couch.
Chesterfield is wild. It sounds like a place or something, a city or a town. I wish I knew the story behind that in Canada.
Good question. Where does the name come from? Well, back in the day, history lesson for you. A Chesterfield was like a really fancy couch, you know, those really big leather, expensive monstrosities that were really popular like 100, 200 years ago. That's what a Chesterfield is. However, it's really common in English to just call an object by the most popular brand name. So, for example, this is chapstick, and this is the most popular brand of lip balm. And in Canada, we just say chapstick, even though this is technically chapstick. I would also call this chapstick. And again, it's because chapstick is the most popular brand of lip balm. So we just call all lip balms chapstick. And I know you guys do that over there too, because don't you call vacuums hoovers? We just call them vacuums.
This is called a beanie, or maybe sometimes a woolly hat, although a woolly hat sounds a bit old-fashioned nowadays, something my granddad might say, to be honest. So yeah, I think the majority of Brits would call this a beanie. And if you're coming to the UK, anywhere in the UK, between October to March, so autumn, winter and spring, make sure you bring your beanie because it will be a bit fresh. It will be pretty chilly. So make sure you bring something to wrap up warm and your beanie.
This is a toque. And if you think you need a toque in the UK, try coming to Canada, buddy. I needed one of these inside last winter because the cold snap was so bad. I had the heat cranked all the way up on my thermostat, and I still needed to wear this inside my house.
Oof, you got to be careful with this one in the UK. Please make sure you say bumbag. It's called a bumbag in the UK. It's very handy if you're traveling or if you're going to a festival. If you're in the UK, don't call it what Keira calls it. What do you say, Keira?
Well, this is a fanny pack. And in Canada, a fanny is just a really cute word for bum. However, in other parts of the world, fanny has a bit of a vulgar meaning, not a bit, a very vulgar meaning for a woman's private parts. So this is probably the only time I suggest using British English over Canadian English. Just call it a bum bag.
This is called a fizzy drink in the UK because the bubbles or the gas make it fizzy. I personally hate them. They make me feel awful, like bloated and just bad. So I really don't drink fizzy drinks. Pop sounds a little weird to me, like something children would say. Like it sounds a bit childish. I couldn't imagine an adult saying pop.
This is pop. And it's funny that you think it sounds childish because to me, it makes complete sense. Soda pop is, you know, the technical term over here. And while Americans took soda in the divorce and they like to say soda, we took pop. Pop is ours. Soda pop, pop makes sense. However, fizzy drink, honestly, I do think it sounds really childish. Fizzy drink.
This is a slang term that you will hear everywhere in the UK, I promise you. It's very, very laid back, it's very informal, but we would say in it. So altogether, he's British, in it. And in it is basically a contraction of isn't it. But you can use it for anything. So you could say, he likes to go out, doesn't he? He likes to go out, In it. They have gone to the shop. Haven't they? They have gone to the shop. In it. So it's very flexible.
He's Canadian, eh? A is probably the most famous out of all of the Canadianisms. And it's just a question tag, which means, you know what I mean? Or right? Or don't you think? I remember when I was living in Australia, I would say A all the time. So my friend would always say B after I'd said A. So for example, I'd say, oh, beautiful day today, A. And she'd say B.
There are a few ways you could describe someone like this in the UK, but the one that comes to mind most is brown noser. Brown noser. To be honest, we'd normally use the verb, like, he's always brown nosing the boss. You will also hear people say arse kisser. He's an arse kisser. Remember, in the UK we say arse instead of ass.
You call him a keener. So a keener is someone who's really good at school and they really enjoy school and they're a bit of a teacher's pet. And the word comes from keen, which means like to be enthusiastic or excited to do something. So like a lot of verbs in English, if you just add ER after it, you've got the person who does that thing.
Well, in the UK, there are two types of parties. One just for the men, and the other one is just for the women. For the men, it's called a stag party or a stag do, and for the ladies, it's called a hen party or a hen do. Basically, it involves a lot of drinking, which probably won't surprise you about British culture. Maybe some pranks as well, and some costumes, of course.
We call it a stag-ette, which really doesn't make much sense because a stag is a male deer, you know, the animal with the antlers. And for some reason in Canadian English, we put "et" on the end of things, male things, and suddenly they become female. Another word for this is bachelorette. A bachelor is a single man. So I don't know how putting "et" on the end suddenly makes a single man female, but language is complicated. But they're super fun. For stagettes or bachelorettes, you usually spend a weekend with your best girlfriends in a fun party city like Las Vegas and have the time of your life.
There are many ways to say this in British English. Maybe perhaps we just say lazy people in general. If you're in a work environment or a work setting, you could say someone is slacking or slacking off. Or you could even use it as a noun. You could say, he's such a slacker. There's the classic idiom that you've probably heard before, couch potato, which basically means you sit on the sofa or the couch and you watch TV all day or for a very long time and you turn into a potato shape. You become fat, so you become a couch potato. You are just being lazy.
Remember before when I said that Canadians are too polite to use the word toilet? Well, we've got a terrible word for someone who's lazy in Canada. We call them dog fuckers. And I know it sounds disgusting, but we don't accept laziness. Culture is complicated. And if you want to avoid being called something as disgusting as dog fucker, you gotta work hard.
Okay, so that's everything for this video. I hope you found it very informative and you learned a little bit more about British culture and Canadian culture. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like button and I'll see you next time.